Hello friends, today I have not one stack of books, but two stack of books to share with you today. I've been buying a lot of books lately. I've even fallen down the trap of online shopping, which I'll get to in a bit. But a lot of obscure and more rare books that I've been looking for some time that have just, magically appeared in my bookshop locally. So I want to talk about these books, share them with you, because this probably will be, I know I've said this in the past, this probably will be the last book haul of the year. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop buying books. I probably will still buy some books before the end of the year, but it'll at least be the last time I'm showcasing a haul of books that I'm splurging on. So without further ado, I've got a bunch of Russian works, as you can expect on this channel, but some other, more obscure novels. I got one sent to me as well, another recommendation from one of you all, and also a collection of artwork, actually. So let's get to these books. The first book is an unbelievable find. I'm still stunned that I found this book locally because it is a very obscure Russian work. It's only been in print, I believe, twice in America, and I just never thought in a million years I would find this book locally because I was scouring the internet looking for it. I figured I would have to buy it online, but there I was at the bookstore yesterday, scanning the aisles as one does, and I was getting late in the alphabet and figuring I wasn't going to find anything too special on this visit, and lo and behold, I looked down at the Z's, and there it is sitting on the shelves. I did like a double take, my eyes widened, my heart jumped, and I ran and grabbed it. And that is Mikhail Zoshchenko's The Nervous People and Other Stories. This is a book, like I said, I've just been looking for forever. Now, before I discuss the book, I have to give an admonition and admit a wrongdoing that I did to this book. So it's not in perfect condition. The edges are roughed up. The pages are a little bit, tinted yellow over time. It wasn't in perfect condition, but it was in a pretty good condition considering it was printed, I believe, in the 70s. Now, I get home. I'm grabbing the books. I bought a couple books, of course, at this visit, and somehow, I don't know how, it was maybe a leftover cup, but I wasn't holding it in the same hand. Somehow I got coffee on the spine. And so it started to bleed into the tops of the pages. I looked down as I brought my books up to my library behind me, and I started freaking out and panicking. I was like, oh no, it's warping. Of all the books I bought, this was the one I was most excited about. And so my wife is helping me. She's air drying or blow drying the pages. Those turned out to be in good shape, but I did get a coffee stain along the spine. And I was so frustrated with myself. It killed my mood, as I'm sure it would all of you. And I'm like fretting and thinking about it, and I get the awful idea. You're going to cringe when you hear this. I get the awful idea, maybe this is like a plastic, cover spine, which it's not. I'm almost certain it's paper-based, which this is why it didn't work. And I think, maybe I can take like rubbing alcohol and like a Q-tip and try and get the coffee stain out, get the browning out. Don't do this. Never do this. And my wife warned me and said not to do this, and I was too stubborn to listen. I Googled, and Google lied to me, and Google said that I should use either soap and water or rubbing alcohol. And what did that do to the book? I started to erase part of the title on the spine. So not only did I get a coffee stain on this precious book that I was so excited to get, I started erasing the title on the spine. So, I am guilty of multiple offenses with this book already. But back to the book, Nervous People and Other Stories by Mikhail Zoshchenko. Zoshchenko is one of those more prominent figures within the comic side of Soviet literature. So think Yuri Alyosha, think Ilf and Petrov with like the 12 Chairs and the Golden Calf. And so he was a prolific short story writer, so I expect a lot of humor in these stories, a lot of cultural context bled into them as well. I believe he has one other collection published in English, I believe, that goes under the title Scenes from a Bathroom, but I'm really excited to read this book. I suspect I'll love it, so keep an eye out because I'm sure I'll be talking about it again in the future. The next book I picked up a few weeks ago is Middlemarch by George Elliott, and I've been looking for a copy of Middlemarch for a while now. The only thing holding me back was the used copies I would see either weren't in great condition or the cover wasn't quite to my liking, so I was holding out for an edition that I had to have. And when I saw this on the shelf, I realized I had to have it because at first I thought it might have been like a Penguin Deluxe edition just because of how beautiful it is. It's got the French flaps, but it's not. It's a Harper Perennial edition, and I just thought it is completely lovely. Its used edition has no markings in it. It was just under $10. The only mark on it is this little Sharpie mark, so that saved me a few dollars, I suppose. But I've been really looking for Middlemarch because it has been raved about all across BookTube, and I've been dying to get into George Elliott. I do have another one of her books, The Mill on the Floss, that I bought roughly a year ago, but really it's just been collecting dust on my shelves because I'm nervous to start reading Elliott with that book. I'd rather start reading Elliott with Middlemarch, since it is basically her magnum opus. It's the work she's most praised for. So excited to read this. I'll probably read it somewhere around the midpoint of next year, at least is the plan. But this work, written and published within the 19th century, deals with a lot of those common English literature themes of women and their status within society, religion, marriage, status overall within the Anglosphere and English culture. So excited to read this, especially because it has gotten so much praise across BookTube. Next is a collection of 3 novels from Yukio Mishima: The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea, Confessions of a Mask, and The Temple of the Golden Pavilion. As soon as I posted my last book haul where I had The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea, I got a ton of comments from you all telling me to read more Mishima, recommending specifically his tetralogy, The Sea of Fertility. And I've been looking for that, but I've been struggling to find either a box set or a full collection of all 4 volumes. So let me know if there's a publisher that has that, or if you see it somewhere published online, let me know and I'll try and scoop it up. But in the meantime, I did find this collection at a bookstore in Montana. I, of course, have already read and owned The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea. I do have a review as well on my Substack if you want to check that out. But The Temple of the Golden Pavilion I have not read, neither have I read Confessions of a Mask as well. So in the meantime, until I find that tetralogy, I'm very much looking forward to reading these other novels from Mishima. And while I was at that same bookstore, I also found a copy of To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf in this Everyman's Library edition. Always love these Everyman Library editions. If I can find them and they're a good price and there's a book that I want, I usually try and grab it. And Virginia Woolf is a writer I still have yet to read, but I do have 2 books from her now, so really there's no excuse to not read them, and they're quite short. I have A Room to One's Own, and I believe that's the correct title, forgive me, and To the Lighthouse. Both of these are very short, less than 200 pages, so both of them are on my TBR to read before the end of the year. So hold me to that, but very excited to get into Virginia Woolf. I've heard phenomenal things about her writing. I believe this one, and a lot of her writing in general, deals with tragedy, with loss, grief. I believe it deals with, or it's at least somewhat inspired by the loss of her mother, from what I know. So with all that said, it's time to start reading Virginia Woolf. Now let's get to some books that I bought online, which has been a new dangerous method of book shopping for me, because generally in the past, I've only done my book shopping at used bookstores, with the exception of a few Amazon purchases, as we all are guilty of. I generally like to do that not only because you can save some money with used books, you can find some cool editions, you can support local, but really it makes it a fun way of curtailing your spending and curtailing your buying habits. And it makes it such a thrill when you find a book you've been looking for or an author you've been looking for at the bookstore. So I've really let the used bookstores in my areas guide what books I've been buying or reading, and kind of been at the whims of chance of somebody turning in or selling certain books. With that said, there's certain books that it's just going to be almost impossible to find. Like, I've never been able to find any books from William Gass or William Gaddis or Clarice Lispector in any of the bookstores that I've been to, not only in my area, but in other states as well. Perhaps just wrong stores, perhaps just wrong time, but some books are just hard to find. And for that reason, I have to turn online sometimes. For example, finding that Mikhail Zoshchenko book was just, it still stuns me. But generally, I've had to turn online for some of these books, especially these more obscure Russian works that maybe only got printed one time in America. So, the first of that being The Petty Demon by Fyodor Sologub. Now, Sologub is a writer that he kind of gets forgotten a little bit. He's in that transitionary phase between the Soviet Union and the Soviet literature kind of genre, but he follows after Dostoevsky. So I guess he's more in that Tolstoy range at the turn of the century. But Sologub kind of gets forgotten. The Petty Demon is really the work he's most known for, although there are some other ones, I believe, translated in English. But Sologub came from humble beginnings, and so he really has a great way of, I think, depicting realism of the time and blending in some satirical elements of the culture, as a lot of great Russian writers do. And also, from my understanding, the novel, the main character of the novel is this misanthropic, almost maniacal or paranoid character, a la Dostoevsky's Stavrogin or his Underground Man. So I think there's a lot of psychological complexity going on with this character. But he's a writer I've had on my TBR for a long time, have been utterly unable to find him online. And I was lucky to find this really great edition, basically in perfect condition with a dust jacket on Abe Books, which is, I should reference, that's where I've been buying a lot of books, is Abe Books, ABE, I believe it's pronounced Abe Books. That has been a phenomenal resource. I have gotten a few of these off eBay as well. eBay is a little more hit or miss, but really I just go off, seller supplied images, make sure I can kind of message the person and ask, hey, can you send me a few extra photos, just to ensure, one, that they're responsive. And usually if they are quick with that, or they have a system for taking good photos, you'll notice that they are going to pack it right, ship it safe, because that's another thing that can happen, is the book might be in great condition, but by the time it gets to you, it's bent to hell because they just threw it in a bubble mailer and they didn't really secure it. But it leads me to the next book, is Ease My Sorrows by Lev Kopelev. This is another book that I've heard of Kopelev, but really what happened was, and this is the danger of online book shopping, is I go and search for it, and I'm like, oh, okay, there's an edition, it's missing a dust jacket, I don't need it. But then there's recommended another great edition for maybe like the same price or $2 more that's got the dust jacket, or the jacket in general, I should say, and it's in great conditions, and I'm like, oh, shoot, all right, I guess I gotta buy it now. So it's just, the problem is, there's usually so many options. You can always find the book that you want, and then it just lingers in your mind. At least it lingers in my mind, like, oh, I should probably buy that. But anyway, back to the book itself. Ease My Sorrows, Kopelev, Lev Kopelev. He's very much in the kind of companionship, or in the genre, the space of Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and that he experienced Golodomor, he experienced some of the horrific incidents of the NKVD, the secret police within Soviet Russia. He experienced firsthand and witnessed some of the most, abhorrent instances and tragedies of that era, and of really the whole Soviet Union. And Ease My Sorrows is part of a trilogy. I believe it's the third book in the trilogy. This one, obviously, as it says here on the cover, a memoir. It specifically deals with the Gulag system. So I believe he spent 10 years, at least 10 years, he was sentenced to that. Just like Solzhenitsyn did in his Gulag Archipelago and One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. Lev Kopelev does the same thing in this book, where he's kind of retelling his own experience, the horrors he witnessed and saw, and all of that. So I thought it would be a great companion book to read along with the Gulag Archipelago once I get to it. And I was inspired when I was reading The House of Government, covering a lot of these atrocities, about reading more about the Gulag system. So pick this up as well. Next is a book that was nowhere near on my radar until I was emailed about it. So thank you, Christina, for letting me know. Christina is a native in Russia, and she had emailed me after she saw my video on Maxim Gorky's My Childhood. She found the whole trilogy in Russian and has been reading it, loved it, and wanted to give me some recommendations as well. One of them being Don't Shoot the White Swans by Boris Vassilyev. I found this copy on eBay. There's not really many available. This one, I think they've only been printed in English in the USSR, and probably haven't been printed since. This was actually published a year before the collapse of the Soviet Union, so I thought that was pretty interesting. But this is a collection of short stories from Vassilyev, one of them being Don't Shoot the White Swans, the other one being Encounter, and then The Trial. So I'm very fascinated, or very intrigued about this. I knew nothing about Boris Vassilyev, nor about this specific work, but I took a recommendation, and also I thought it was very neat that his edition was not only published in the USSR, it's got, that it was purchased for 2 rubles and 80 kopecks on the back. It's got a little handwritten note that I guess when this book was given to either a spouse, a friend, a colleague of some sort, so very neat to see that as well. And also just to read a later Soviet Russian work. I've read a lot of, the earlier, first few decades of the Soviet Union, and a lot of that literature. This was written really after those heavy, stringent censorship periods, specifically during the Stalin era. This was written after that, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see how the literature and the culture and the society is depicted in this book compared to those earlier works. Back to some local book shopping. The next work I found, I was also stunned to find in a store, just because it wasn't top of mind. I wasn't looking for it. I didn't expect to find it. I don't think it's regularly in print in America. And the edition I found was beautiful in my opinion, and that is Peter the First by Alexei Tolstoy. Not to be confused with Leo Tolstoy. No blood relation as far as I know. And Alexei Tolstoy is a very famous and distinguished author in his own right. And actually, Peter the First, if you're unfamiliar, it was very popular in its day. I think it was published 1917 or in the 1920s range, but very popular work. Of course, hence the title. It's covering the life and the rise of Peter the Great, who's one of the most memorable figures and czars within Russian history. He led a ton of reforms. I believe he essentially founded the plans and the construction of what we know today as St. Petersburg. And he brought a lot of Western European culture, architecture ideas into what was a little bit behind the times Russia at the time. So very important figure. This work is a bit of a historical fiction or biography as far as I know, but I'm sure plenty of it is fictionalized as well. But I knew that this work was very famous within Russia. I had it mentioned multiple times in the history book I had read. And this edition is very beautiful. Not only did it come with a dust jacket, but there's this nice map on the inside. It's in beautiful condition, no markings anywhere on it. The hard copy, or the hard cover I should say, is in great pristine condition, no issues there. The jacket itself has a little bit of wear and tear on the spine, but other than that, it's a beautiful copy. It's a book I'm very eager to read. It's about 700 pages long, so a decent sized novel. But I'm very excited to read it, not only as a, reading one of the more prominent works within Russian literature, but also because of the historical context and elements intertwined in it as well. So, Peter the First by Alexei Tolstoy. Next is a book I'm very interested to read just because of the elements contained within it, and it was actually sent to me from one of you all, so I'm very grateful for that. And if any of you ever want to send me a book, give me a recommendation, or just chat about books, my email is in the description below, so I'd love to hear from you all. But this book is Symphony for the City of the Dead by M.T. Anderson. Now, what is this book about? It is about the 3-year siege of Leningrad that happened during World War II and the symphony that was composed by Dmitri Shostakovich. So this book recounts the grim, horrific details of the 3-year siege during World War II, where, of course, the Soviet troops were battling the German troops. Not only did hundreds of thousands of soldiers and really up to 2 million people total die during this period, but specifically hundreds of thousands of civilians lost their lives. And Shostakovich, being a resident of Leningrad, he composed the symphony not only to honor and kind of embody the atrocities, the pain, the suffering, the tragedy of it all, but also the Soviet troops and soldiers of the time would listen to the Symphony No. 7. It would invigorate their spirit. It would give them, it would ignite more patriotism and fire into them to battle out there and to overcome it during World War II. So I think this will be a really fun book to read, not only because I can get some historical context and read about that time period, but also I can listen to the symphony composed by Shostakovich and see how he's able to capture and encapsulate and encompass those feelings and those experiences of the time into music. How those elements of art, the same way that we can try to grasp an emotion and experience and memory and retell that through literature, through writing, through poetry, how an artist like Dmitri Shostakovich can do that through music. I think will be very fascinating to read this and pair it with listening to the entire symphony. But the book itself looks very fascinating as well. There's a bunch of photos mixed in as well. Not that I'm a sucker for photo books, for picture books, but I mean, it is really helpful to visualize this stuff, and a lot of pictures that's either in some of these historical books, you can't just Google them online. They do come from archives or from special sources. So that's also very fun to see. So again, thank you very much for sending this. As you guys know, I'm guilty of a preference right now towards Russian literature and culture. I'm very fascinated by it. So this will be a great complement to what I've already been reading. And speaking of complementing works, the last book I bought was very much inspired by my reading of The House of Government by Yuri Sloskin. And The House of Government is a phenomenal historical work that covers the period leading up to the Russian Revolution, of course the revolution itself, and those formative years after, as the Bolsheviks and the Soviet Union are figuring out their new system of government, their policies, as well as the decades following with Stalin and World War II. But specifically towards the end of the book, there is a female artist that was referenced and spoken about. Her works were shown, and I just found them not only beautiful, but just mesmerizing. And I wanted to see more. And I was looking online, I was trying to find her artwork, and it really wasn't available. But I did find a collection of her art that was published in 1999 when it was displayed in the National Museum of Women in the Arts in D.C. And so that's this copy right here, Her Life and Work by Eva Levina-Rozengolts. And I'll put some of the artwork on the screen as I talk about it. But once you see some of her painting, not only is it just simply magnificent, but it just feels powerful. It feels ominous. You feel the tragedy, the pain, the suffering, just embodied in these figures that almost, are like constructed in scribbles. The pastel work, I just found it so captivating. Like it just drew me in. I wanted to know more. I haven't really been much of an art enthusiast into paintings, really into orchestras or symphonies, classical music so much in the past. I haven't been against it. I just haven't been into it as much yet. But the older I've gotten, the more just immersed I've been in art and literature, the more I've gravitated towards it. And so perhaps I'll buy more things like this in the future. And so I just thought her artwork was special. I thought it would be beautiful to constantly look at, potentially write about, and also pair along with some of the tragic works I read, whether it is about the gulags, the prison systems, the tearing apart of families during the Soviet Union, and all of that. I just think they're stunning pictures. Like I said, I'll have them on the screen. But that was the last book I bought. So that's it for this haul. Have I bought more books? Yes, I bought more books, but I'm not gonna shove them all in this haul. We'll leave it there at 10 books. That's a nice solid number. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of the books. Have you read some of these? Are there other recommendations you would give me? Are you gonna lure me down the trap of buying more books? It's very likely at this point. But with that said, like the video if you enjoyed it. Definitely comment. Let me know your thoughts on really any of the above. Subscribe for more content, and I will see you all in the next video.